The purpose of my channel has been to spread the good news of how great things are going to be once the clean energy revolution is well underway. Maybe if you've been watching some of my videos, I will have piqued your interest in EVs, and maybe you're at a point where you think you want to try one just to find out a bit more for yourself. So in this video I'm going to cover some ways where you can try an EV with very limited expenditure. So the purpose of the video is to list some ways in which you can try out an EV without having to spend very much. What I'm going to do is cover some categories and then mention one or two examples of companies or schemes within that category that may be of interest. There are probably lots of other companies and schemes available. I don't know them all and I can't list them all. It's worth saying that I have no ties to any of the companies I may mention. So the first thing you might try is a test drive. It's a pretty obvious way to try a car, to go to any dealership and get a regular test drive. If you can, I would suggest you try to find someone with some good EV credentials. Try to find someone with some specialism in selling EVs if at all possible. You will get some confusing information from some dealerships where they're not as far along the route of being able to sell EVs as others. Unfortunately, the staff turnover at car dealerships is extremely high, and so knowledge can sometimes be a bit limited about what that particular brand's car is capable of doing. There is, of course, minimal cost with a standard test drive. The downside to a standard test drive is that you may feel some sales pressure from a salesman. You're going to have someone trying to talk you into buying something very short term because that's how they think. That's something that I'm not particularly comfortable with, so I tend to try and avoid short test drives where I can. They are also short. You get a limited time in the car. You may be lucky and be able to have something like an hour, but very often it's going to be 30 minutes or possibly even less. And you are very likely to be accompanied, so that salesperson may come with you and may want to talk at you and ask questions about what it is you're after so as to be able to do the sales approach better at a later point. And so that can be quite distracting from the task that you're trying to achieve of understanding the EV, understanding the car. The next one is an extended test drive. A subset of brands offer extended test drives where you can have the car for a day or possibly 2 or sometimes even 3 or 4 days. You get the car for much longer that way, which means that you get to try it more in your day-to-day life, which gives you a better understanding of how it fits with what you do on a regular basis. In this scenario, you're going to pay for insurance plus possibly some charging, but not usually much else. The downsides of extended test drives are that there will still be some sales pressure, usually after the fact. They'll want to contact you after the extended test drive is over in order to try and sell you the car that you've tried out. There are also a limited number of brands that support extended test drives. However, just at the moment, because people are in this transitionary period where they're trying to work out whether an EV is for them, I think it's more prevalent in the EV space than it has been before. So now might be a good time to try it. There will also be some limitations on who can have a car based upon age and your general insurance risk, but actually that's probably true of pretty much everything we're going to talk about. The next one up is a car sharing scheme or club. These seem to be springing up all over the place. The purpose of these is that they're a mobility solution for those who don't own cars. The idea that they're trying to encourage people, instead of buying a car, or for those who can't afford to buy a car, that you have a car that you borrow for a short amount of time to do a very specific task and then put it back where it was before. Generally, you're going to hire these cars by the hour and you're going to collect them from wherever they live, usually a dedicated parking bay. Not always, but that sort of thing. Now, some of these car sharing schemes seem to focus on low emission vehicles and EVs, but not all of them, so bear that in mind when you're looking for one. The one that I will mention in this category that I know the best is Co-Wheels. And indeed, if you watched a number of my other videos, we've already seen a Co-Wheels car on one of the videos. Do you remember which one? Don't worry, it's not a mandatory test. But if you watched my video on charging infrastructure and what was available in the Oxford area, we saw a Co-Wheels car sat at the Redbridge Park and Ride. In that case, it was an MG4. Often Co-Wheels seem to use MGs. In fact, it might almost be exclusive that they have MGs available. I think that's because MGs are at the cheaper end of the market, so it reduces their capital cost if they use MGs for this purpose. And that means things like ZS EVs, and maybe now the MG4, since we've seen one at Co-Wheels, are the sort of car that you're likely to get for this sort of test. They're not all EVs though, so do be careful of that. I have seen some petrol MG ZS and possibly even some diesels. So the downsides of car sharing. Well, paying by the hour is cost effective for a short hire, but remember that it is going to add up quite quickly if you have it for an extended period. What you might want to do therefore is try a couple of short hires, have it for a couple of hours and then think about it and then go back and have another go. That might work for you. There are limited types of car available. The purpose of this is to get people mobility rather than to get them to try a very specific car. So there's not a wide choice of makes and models available. And these schemes tend to be more available in cities and very large towns. So you may need to travel to the start point if you live in a small town or a village. However, since the purpose of having one is to drive it for a little while, maybe that's not the end of the world. So the next category is commercial car sharing. This is things like Turo and HireCar, the two I'm going to cover in this category. Now, Turo didn't used to offer filtering by fuel type, which is why I used HireCar when I wanted to try out a car. That meant that finding EVs was much more difficult on Turo because you didn't have that filtering option, whereas you did on HireCar. However, it looks like they've updated Turo since I did this, and you can now filter by fuel type effectively. So you can focus in on EVs, which is great. So Turo seems to be priced by the day. Now, it might be that if you say you want it for a few hours, that the price would be reduced. I haven't used Turo, so I can't be sure of that, but that might be worth looking at. Often with Turo, you're hiring someone's own car, so there is often an owner to do a handover, someone to talk you through how the controls work and that sort of thing, which you might appreciate possibly. The prices here seem to start from about £35 a day for something like a Nissan Leaf, but £65 a day or more seems more common really for most other cars. It will obviously be more money for more expensive and desirable cars, so if you wanted a Model 3 for example, that would potentially be somewhat more money. So with HireCar, that's a slightly different model in the sense that they offer two different things in one really. They're sort of doing the car sharing scheme from the point of view of having pool cars, as well as doing it from the point of view of having people's personal cars that you can get, you can try out. So there's a mixture of both. The pool cars have been a bit problematic for me, so I've tried 3 times to get a car from HireCar. The first 2 times were pool cars. The first one I found but wouldn't unlock, and we tried for an hour to get the car to behave itself, but I eventually had to give up. And then the second time there was an admin error in that the car was listed as being in one place but turned out to be 25 miles away. It had moved and they hadn't updated the address on the system. So that was a bit of a mistake from HireCar's point of view. I have been able to get in touch with people when I've had those problems, but that's not great. It's not been an ideal experience. The third time I was actually trying someone's personal car, and that worked much more successfully because they were in for me to collect the keys from. There was no problem with needing to unlock the car via the app. You know, they gave me the key and spoke to me, and we had a nice chat. He was a lovely guy as well, as it happens. So generally the personal cars are somewhat sort of simpler a process and less likely to go wrong, so just bear that in mind. Now with HireCar, the pricing is all by the hour, and £4.50 an hour seems to be fairly common sort of level. Some of them are a bit more. There are a few that are a little bit less, but for a reasonably basic EV, that seems about right. Now, with these commercial car sharing schemes, bear in mind that there can be some extra fees that you only find out about as you sort of go to check out on the website or on the app. Some of them charge admin charges per rental. It's not usually very much, it's a few pounds, but that's the bit that is potentially covering the cost of the infrastructure of running the website and the app and that kind of thing. And there can be additional top-up insurance add-ons if you want them, so you can take out, better insurance with a lower, payment if anything were to go wrong, a lower excess. Those are available. They're optional usually, but that's just worth knowing that you need to, just look out for those additional fees when you're working out the total cost of what one of these commercial car sharing opportunities might be. Now, the last two options are somewhat more expensive, so we are getting towards the more expensive end here of what you might have to pay. However, with these more expensive options, you do get the car for longer, and if you are feeling some trepidation about EVs because they're so different from what you've known before, then the longer tests may be more suitable for you, so that's worth considering how long you're going to get the best benefit from, really. So the first one of these more expensive ones is a commercial hire company, just hiring a car for a day or a couple of days. Now, these seem to start from about £90 a day now. Prices have gone up quite significantly, and of course you can be paying more than that as well. If you're hiring for an extended period, a week for example, then it's not 7 times the daily rate. There's usually a fairly good reduction in the price if you're having it for that longer period, so that's worth looking into. The problem with hiring really is that it can be very difficult to specify an exact type of car. What they tend to want to do is put you into a category of car without really, allowing you to choose specifically what you're going to have. And that means that for some of the companies, you actually risk getting a petrol car, which is obviously not what we're trying to do here. So you may be better off talking to a smaller company where you can actually speak to someone and arrange that you have a specific car, and point out that the whole point of doing it is that you want to try out an EV. And I think the final one is a monthly subscription. So there are 2 companies that I know of, and there may be more, that do monthly subscription where you can have the car for a single month and you're paying by month. And those are Onto and Elmo. So the great thing here is that you get to immerse yourself in the EV world for a whole month. So you will really get to learn what it is that you're buying into. Is charging a problem for you because you're going to live with it for quite a long time, and you're going to understand, all the different types of journeys that you do, or at least a good selection of them, and certainly try and arrange it so that you're doing some longer trips where you to have a monthly subscription. So these start at about £500 a month. Now you can get a few that are cheaper than that, but they're pretty small cars, and so it depends what you want. Unfortunately, these 2 options, both Onto and Elmo, are made more expensive by the fact that they insist on delivering the car to you and picking up from you, and you have to pay for both of those, and each one is about £150 once you've added the VAT in. So those delivery and collection fees do make it quite a lot more expensive, so bear that in mind. I think what they're probably trying to do is encourage you to have it for a few months rather than just one, but that's kind of making it more expensive again, of course. Now, we're all on a journey in this clean energy revolution, and some of us are in further along it than others. We're trying to navigate our way through potentially stormy seas and find the safest route for ourselves at a risk level with which we feel comfortable, and that's fine. So trying an EV, I think, is a sensible next step. We're now getting to a point where EVs are good for pretty much everyone, and so I suggest everyone gives it a bit of a go, with the view to buying an EV sometime in the future, maybe 6 months or a year or 18 months away. That's the sort of thing that I'm talking about, but just get better informed about them now by trying one out. I would suggest you try to approach it as a fun experiment. It's a bit like treating yourself to an experience or a day out. Think of it like that. However, do a little bit of prep beforehand. Write yourself a list of the things that concern you and then use your time with the car to try and work out whether that's actually a valid problem. I wish you great luck and I hope you enjoy your time driving an EV. So that's it for this time. It's just a quick video and hopefully I've given you some useful ideas on how to dip your toe in the electric water at minimal risk. Now of course that's a terrible metaphor because electricity and water really don't mix, but you know what I mean. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments in the section below. Ask any questions that you may have or give me any feedback on what you've seen today. If you've liked the video, then I'd really appreciate you clicking the thumbs up button. That helps the YouTube algorithm understand that it may be worth promoting to other people who may enjoy it. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks.